Black people, you don't own this. That's the title of the video that I saw. And Amala, I think I'm saying your name correctly, sister. This issue has so many layers that did not get mentioned. And this is for you, also anyone else who's watching. So I'm gonna start with some of the TikToks and then some of the quotes from the video that were said. I just wanna make it clear from the beginning, I do not believe in gatekeeping whatsoever, but I also don't believe in black and white thinking because everything is on a spectrum, and that's the main problem that I have with this video. And so, yeah, I don't agree with what she is saying or her narrative. Partially yes, but also a lot of it no, absolutely not. And from the bottom of my heart, I really hope the next time she makes a video that she speaks with more diverse people in the community before talking about the people in the community. First quote, Black people, or from the TikTok, Black people have been oppressed and demeaned for using AAVE. So yeah, let's quickly acknowledge that as a whole group, yes, we have experienced oppression and we have been looked down upon for speaking a certain way. And I think anyone who's ever been made fun of for the way they speak can understand this and relate to this. Now, layer this with the people who are making fun of you being white in every occasion because we aren't really, oppressing each other for speaking AAVE. Now, you know what? And we do for oppress each other for like talking white, but for speaking the way we do amongst each other, nah, that does not happen. Second one said, it was a TikTok asking the question, should you use AAVE? I feel that this doesn't matter. We have freedom of speech. You can say what you want to say. I can say what I want to say. And we have the right to be offensive and inconsiderate in our speech as well if we want to. But the question is, that I think should be addressed is, what happens when you use AAVE, and why do some Black Americans respond so aggressively or angrily? And that's what I'm going to touch on. The reason why, because Amala in her video does not acknowledge this like at all. Next TikTok said, what is AAVE, and why are Black people gatekeeping it? Oh, sorry, that wasn't a quote from Amala. That was like the video of the introduction of the video. And just this question alone in the title, man, I have no words for how bold that statement was. It was a bit ridiculous. And so like people were saying, we own AAVE and only Black people should use it and we should call out white people when they do. That was one comment. So the next one, and then she mentioned how you hear Black people say things like, I ain't, I'm finna. And these examples she gave, they were okay. And she correlates it back to how it actually originated in England, which makes sense because you know what? Slaves started to speak like the slaves' masters, the people who owned them. Going down, continuing in the video, she posted a TikTok where a Black guy gives a translation of like, standard English and African-American vernacular English. And one of the examples was, I'm lying. And the African-American translation was, no cap. So here in this video, we have an example of where, how can I say this? Something that did not arrive from England, because guess what? Language evolves, new words, new phrases are creative, and Black people have always done this and will continue to do this. And you can find a lot of this in rap music, because guess what? Back in the 1800s, let's say when, or 1700s, whatever she said in her video, when the people from England were saying, I ain't, or axe, guess what? They were not saying, no cap, boy bye, bye Felicia, shuckin' and jivin'. These things they did not say. So the point is that perhaps maybe the basic structure of AAVE as a whole came from Southern England and has developed over time because slavery. But I'm pointing out is that the language is growing and that new words exist that are unique to Black Americans that originate with us. Now, in the example, she gave an example of a video, I think of a white girl using the word finna. And I saw the video and it sounded actually kind of stupid because the white girl was like, I finna do this. It sounds dumb because it was misused. And I'm sorry for that girl who's being dragged, but she didn't use it correctly. And I also want to point out that there are a lot of white people who speak like us, a lot of Asians who speak like us, a lot of Latinos who speak like us. Because when you grow up in the same community, you guys all talk alike. For example, one of my best friends, he's Asian. Yo, he talks hood as hell, but it doesn't come off as mocking or copying. It comes off as him being himself because that is just how he naturally talks. That is his one way of speaking. And I think as people in general, we can tell when someone is being themselves and when they're just trying to be cool. And I can understand, like in a general sense, it is annoying when you see someone trying too hard. And yeah, I'm just gonna stop there. Let me continue. Let me go to the next one. Sorry. Another one, I guess one of her quotes, this is like paraphrase more or less. She said, you cannot keep a language to yourself. You don't own words. You don't have the right to police them. As a generation, we will realize that that's the case. And I read the statement, I was like, you know what? I agree. Language should be shared, and that's the beauty of it, is that it grows and it changes. And of course, preserving the language is nice. We love to preserve our language, but it's also cool when you see people from other cultures kind of take on your language. And in a, let's say, generic American sense, we have like the word to Google something. And guess what? A lot of other languages have adopted this word and kind of made it their own in their language. And now to Google is a verb that exists in every other, not every other language, but like in other languages in general. And that's the beauty of it. The next one, bear with me because this is the point that I'm trying to make. She gives an example of how she had to code switch and how she had to talk around two groups of people. And this was the most interesting part, because clearly here she's stating that she did this to fit in. Now she's biracial doing this. Now imagine being, you 100% black, you dark-skinned Negro, whatever. Now you're code switching to survive. Can you put yourself in these shoes for a second? You're code switching to survive. It's more than cultural. It becomes a survival mechanism. And you can argue, you can say, well, sometimes we have to speak more proper at work in academic settings. Yes, obviously, no duh, this makes sense. But sis, you know damn well that when you're black, we have to work twice as hard, try twice as hard at everything we do. And we don't have the grace of being white where we get a pass to do anything. We don't get passes now. Historically, we don't get passes. Matter of fact, think about it. Segregation just ended in, or across the whole country, I think in 1964, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think 1964, because even my grandma went to a segregated school. And think about it, even right after that, when things were legally allowed to be integrated, do you really think all of a sudden people just change and adjusted to black people? I'm gonna let you answer that for yourself. And you guys can anyone can answer for themselves to see, what level of delusional you're at. The next quote that was said was that, she said, like, that's how black kids spoke, and that's the language they took on for whatever. And like, whatever reason, that's what she said, for whatever reason. And when I heard her say that, I was like, yo, like this the whole demeanor and the way of speaking about us and about her experiences was really just, I can't even pinpoint a word, but let's think about this. How about they've been speaking like this because, they've been segregated and only welcome in spaces with people who look like them. So of course, they're going to preserve their speech across the entire country because, yeah, they speak, let's say, improper English in the South. But guess what? Black people in New York State, where I'm from, we use those same words. We say finna as well. It's not, you have to ask yourself, is it cultural when it's no longer based on location because it stretches beyond the South? Think about that for a second. You were saying people in the South speak like this, but guess what? Black people across the whole country speak like this, and we're all being judged for it. So now, is it a cultural thing or not? Next thing that was said, she goes, yeah, it's not perfect English and it's not great English. We know this. This is why we code switch. And I would say, like, in an academic setting or in a work setting, we should have a standard language because I believe that for efficiency, you need to have the best means of communication no matter what that is. So I know some people want to use AAVE everywhere in life where you go. No, you cannot do that. Because if you're working, let's say, for an international team, you need for everybody in that team to be able to understand your language and you need to be able to be understood yourself. And so I'm sure Amala will probably agree with that, but that's just something else I want to point out that, yeah, we know it's not great English. We do it to survive. And for those who want to continue using it, let's say for black people who like try to fight to use it all the time, you have to make adjustments because it doesn't make sense it would be hindering communication using it in spaces where it's not the most understood. Let me put it like that. And she goes, do we want to gatekeep slang and say that's ours? Well, this is something I actually wrote down here. I wrote that we have created a lot of words and expressions that are unique to us, Black people, and it only makes sense, obviously, to be proud and preserve them. And you know what? Obviously, these words that we made are amazing because think about it. They've gone international. They have become the new internet language. That's how powerful and creative our culture has been, where it has influenced the whole world. And let me just remind you all who are probably, if you're not Black watching this, how Black people historically have gotten so much stolen from them and have never gotten any credit for it. So if you put yourselves in the shoes of a group of people who've never gotten credit for things, who have gotten a lot stolen from them, And the stuff that they have made, you kind of respond with, well, it's not beneficial for you guys to talk like that, so drop it and get over it. What? You're really gonna say that to these people? Like, everything has been stolen from them. They've never gotten any credit for it. Because even Amala, she only acknowledges the basic structure of the language that comes from Southern England, but she doesn't acknowledge any of the things that we have created and we're doing right now at the moment. Because I guarantee you there will be some new slang words this year, next year, created by Black people. And guess what? They probably will not get credit for it. And can you imagine how frustrating that is when you keep doing things that are like mind-blowing, that get so much attention and you don't get any credit for it? Think about this. Next part that she points out is that she says Northern white people look down on Southern white people for the language. Yeah, I agree with this because obviously I lived in the US. I'm from New York, let's say on my mom's side, like 4th, 5th generation, born in Manhattan, but a lot of my family's from the South. So yeah, let's say North and South. And I would say that there are people who look down on Black people across the country for the way they speak, because our way of talking has no safe space unless it's among us. And I should repeat that again. Our way of talking has no safe space unless it's among us, or unless we're entertaining white people and giving them, like, our lingo in a form of entertainment that they can swallow. Because that's the only time it's really, cool or acceptable. Next thing she says, she goes, it's not going to gain them prosperity or success or respect. Man, like, have you thought about what our where have we incorporated this language that has made us prosperous, especially musicians, for instance? Like, what have Black people created? Rock and roll, jazz, R&B, hip hop, gospel, blues, funk, all that using African American vernacular English and being successful and prosperous. Like, we have succeeded in infiltrating the whole world with our culture based off the way we speak, and we still continue to do it now. And if you think about, like, even let's say in the acting scene, when you have a movie and you need somebody to play a Black person from the 1800s, how do you think that actor is going to learn how to speak to play this role, and that actor is going to make money? I haven't seen Django, but I assume that Django was speaking AAVE in that movie. And also, let me add another point, is that when we meet another Black person, it's nice to relax and speak how you speak at home and just be comfortable, because our speech as Black people is policed throughout the entire country. It's not just a North or South issue where Southerners, are judged by the Northerners. Our speech is policed across the whole country. Every aspect of us is policed unless a white person approves of it and is entertained by it. And that is essentially how it is. Next thing she said, gatekeep language that benefits you and that does something for you in this society. That's what she was telling us to do. And I asked myself, what society? Is a white society? What is she talking about? Because, like, in Black society, this language welcomes me. It benefits me. When I'm in Europe and I'm in Europe now, I'm in Albania, and I meet another African American who talks like me, it benefits me so much because it brings me so much joy to my heart, because it reminds me of home. Like, it's beautiful when I hear it. But I get it, what she means, though, because let's say in white spaces or in academic spaces or academic settings, this will not benefit you, because we have a standard to uphold and to keep to. But I really need you to think about this, Amala, is about how language affects the heart before you try to dismiss it as something ignorant or as something uneducated, because there are levels to this. And I want to give you guys an example. I'm trying to figure out if I say this in English or I say it in Italian. Vabbè, lo dico in italiano. Quando stavo a Rochester, New York, ho incontrato una donna siciliana e ho detto a lei, amonin. And she smiled because she hadn't heard that word in such a long time. And that incorrect, bad Sicilian dialectal word that she heard, it made her happy, because your language touches your heart. When you hear people that speak like you, it touches your heart. It is a beautiful thing. Like, I really just need her to understand that, how deep language goes emotionally for a lot of people. And another point that she made, this is the last point from her thing that I'm going to talk about, but not the end of the video for sure, because I got way more to say that's more important than this, is that she said people find it cool, so we should appreciate it. More or less is what she was saying. And this is my message to the Black people who like to gatekeep. I'm going to read this because I wrote this out because it was too much for me to remember. The world is changing faster than we can heal, and our lingo is moving to places we have never been to, and it's hard for us to adjust and accept it, especially when a lot of wrongs have not been made right in our own country and we can't control it. And I know we may feel like we can't have nothing and stuff is always being stolen from us, and it will continue to happen as this aspect of our language we can't control. We are literally the coolest people on the planet. And when y'all leave the US, y'all will see how cool African Americans are and how far our culture has spread. Like hip hop is worldwide, breakdancing is worldwide. It is crazy. Like we dominate what is popular and we dictate what is popular. We dictate what is trendy half of the time. And guess what? We are such a small group with such a unique culture, and we have impacted the whole world. So keep that in mind when you're on the internet. And to white Americans and let's say people from other countries, Amala makes great points, the great points in her video, but please keep in mind the reason why, again, I repeat, the reason why some Black people respond the way they do. When you try to fit in like Amala, you get made fun of for speaking a certain way your whole life by a group of people that have more power than you, and you get mocked for speaking like you do, because even if the word axe came from England, we know damn well a lot of white Americans will make fun of Black Americans for speaking like that. And there's it's a stereotype that Black Americans say this. That's how you know, that's how connected it is to us, that even white Americans will think, yeah, that's something Black people say. They always say axe instead of ask. Like that, just keep that in mind. Please remember that no matter how much you admire it, it can be triggering to them and bring up a lot of traumatic experiences that they've had, and we can't control you. We cannot control you. But remember that everyone heals at their own rate. And just because something is cool for you, it doesn't mean you're not poking at somebody else's trauma. And if you do find it cool, learn about the culture. Think about the Black experience, because you can be doing more harm than good by having the best intentions, you can be doing more harm than good. Now there's 3 comments on that page that I saw that I also want to address in the comment section. Somebody said, it's super funny how for every other culture, it's respectful to learn and speak their language around them. It's not the same. Historically, it is not the same. And if you actually learn about the culture, then you would understand how offensive it can be for some Black people. Because not all, but those who haven't healed yet may have problems with this. And you can't blame them for not healing yet, because do you see where we are right now in the US with the state of how things are? I have met a lot of people who have left the US, Black people, because of the way things are. Think about this. It is not the same. Next comment that I saw on the page, it says, the thing I hate about this whole anti-racist crap these days is that they actually are trying to dictate how you must act and speak based solely on your race. They don't even understand they're the ones being racist. And to that I say, you don't understand how your entitlement to language is making you miss how you can be triggering someone else's trauma. Because all you have to do is use language around people that shows the most respect to them. And if I say, for example, if I say, yo, call me they, them, then you use they, them. If I say, don't use the word finna around me because I have gotten fun of my whole life growing up for saying this word, then you follow suit. It is really not that hard to not use words that are going to trigger somebody else's trauma. And that is the whole point of what I'm saying. It's not about right or wrong or gatekeeping and Black people saying, oh, this is mine. It is about people's trauma and their experiences and the stuff that is still happening now in their day-to-day life and what they're going through. And the way you communicate with them can be like, turning off or on a light switch for them. So that's more or less what I'm trying to get to. The next comment that said, I'm white, but I live in Hawaii, and I always notice myself using Hawaiian slang, or pidgin as it's called here, whenever I'm talking to my Hawaiian friends. Changing the way you talk around certain people is human. It's how we socialize. Trying to gatekeep accents and slang will only make socializing even more difficult. I agree with this, because gatekeeping will not allow you to grow. But when you understand why people are gatekeeping and you still do stuff that triggers their trauma, then you're making it harder yourself for you to interact with that group of people and for you to socialize with that group of people. And also, if you're doing this and you're aware, then that's just kind of a, I'm trying not to use curse words in this video, but it's a you know what move. So here's some advice for Amala. This advice is straight from my partner who's not black at all. I was like, yo, I just watched this video from this girl. It's like, the biracial girl with the opinions on YouTube who's all over like, your shorts. And he was like, yeah, he goes, her main problem is that she sees black issues only from a cultural context and she needs to think outside the box. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna put that in this video and say that. But what I have to say is, please be considerate. Please see things on a spectrum. Please hear other people's opinions. And again, talk to diverse people in the community before you talk about them, and consider our experiences. Be mindful of the generational trauma and the current trauma that we're going through and where we stand in the world. And next time you see the way we act, think of the why. Why are they acting this way? And the one thing I can say about her though is that I do like her videos in general just because she's a very strong black woman. She's unapologetic, and that's some stuff I love to see, because I love to see a black woman speak her mind no matter what, because guess what? That's what Martin Luther King fought for. That's what a lot of our ancestors fought for. It's just for you to have that, that capability, that moment, that voice to be heard. But the problem with this is that I've read the comments section and you have incited a lot of, I don't want to say ignorance, but there's the people in your comment section aren't thoughtful the same way the video I think that you made wasn't as thoughtful either. Here's my message to Black Americans. Guys, we're cool. We cannot help it. We're cool. Let's try to share some of our swag with the whole world and be very mindful, and please pay attention to the difference between mocking and admiring. And I know it's really, really hard for us to see this because we've been mocked for so many years and we've been forced to get over it before we're ready, but we don't even have a choice anymore because we're too cool and we're too international now. So now we kind of, our coolness is like, it's biting us in our behind now because we're just so, lit that we have to allow what we've produced to be shared with the world and accept it, and really focus on focus on the person's intentions. Because guess what? We know a lot of people are ignorant. Most people who like our culture know nothing about our culture. Keep that in mind. They know nothing about us except, they have slave ancestors. That's pretty much all they know, especially in other countries. So on the internet, please be mindful of that because everyone is ignorant. In the US, a lot of them are ignorant as well. Like even that girl, Mala, she has a voice and she's not even thinking about our experiences when making these videos. And she's half black and she code switched herself. Think about that. Like, obviously she must have had some type of, I don't know if I can call it trauma or not, but imagine growing up biracial, what you have to go through to try to navigate and be in different spaces. Because she admitted herself at a certain age, she just like, forget it, I quit, I'm gonna be myself. She had to come to this conclusion. She had to work, she had to grow into her blackness. Like, that's something we all have to go through. Anyway, this is my message to everyone else, to be mindful of who you're talking to and use context to determine if your language is triggering or thoughtful. And especially for the people who've been made fun of for how they speak, you know how it is. Like, you should be mindful of things that can be potentially triggering to others, especially my group of people. Like, if you want to roll with us, we will accept you to roll with us, but we just want you to be yourself at the end of the day, because that's what we respect, is individuality. The last thing, I want to touch on the example I gave earlier for the Italian lady, because I know I mentioned it, is that she had a dialect. She's from Sicily, and we know some Italians can be really racist towards Sicilians, especially from the north. And when I used that word with her, she felt at home. And I want to explain the reasons why it did not trigger her. It's because, one, she was never oppressed by someone who looks like me for speaking the way she did. She's never had to code switch around people who look like me. She's never had to conform any part of her life to anyone that looks like me, nor did anyone who looked like me have more power than her in her life. These are the reasons why it was not triggering to her. Now think about that for yourself in the reverse when you're speaking to Black people. And for myself personally, I just found her language cool. Like, I love Italian. I love like learning little like Sicilian phrases. I think it's cool, so I used it around her. And also, she barely spoke English. And let me add this, I want you to think about, or just imagine meeting someone who's been made fun of for speaking a certain way their whole life, and also historically been made fun of speaking a certain way, where people like will imitate them in blackface and speak like a black person. Keep that in mind. Like, it's just entertainment for a lot of white people back then. It was entertainment for white people back then. And know that for you speaking the way you are, when you're, let's say, using their language, that there are not many social repercussions for you. And just keep that in mind, how the person on the receiving end might be taking that. So basically, I'm just asking for people to be thoughtful. I'm not trying to set any rules. I don't think anyone should be gatekeeping, because people speak how they naturally speak, and that's beautiful. But my point is just to be mindful of who you're speaking to, and I hope this video will explain why some of us have given you the reaction that you do not like of gatekeeping. And I want you to consider the reason why we do it, and also check your own behavior. When you realize you've done something to upset someone else, don't point the finger, but point at the trauma, try to figure out what is hurting them and how have your words hurt them, essentially. Because you can have the best intentions and still hurt somebody. But also, I've spoken way too much, so I'm about to end this video right now, y'all. Peace.